Hello, everybody. So, my name is Sean Owen. I'm the Chief Creative Officer for All Heart Holistic Group, and I wanted to share a little bit about my story and my background so you get a better understanding of who I am, what I represent, and how I wish to serve humanity, my communities, and in all the different capacities. So I may make some mistakes here. This is going to be a raw cut, just putting it out there. I'm going to put out maybe 5-10 minutes, and I'm just going to share a little bit about my story, a little bit about my history, a little bit about my background. So just a little bit about me is that I've had an extraordinary life that hasn't always been pleasant. Some moments have been extremely dark, very stressful. Grew up in, a sometimes stressful environment. My father was never there. My father was a drug addict in and out of prison during my early years of living. Mom and dad got divorced when I was 2. So my mom did the best she could raising 3 kids on her own, which it came with its own struggles. But one thing that I know is that she did love me. She was always there for me. And, we had to do what we had to do. And there was times that it was hard. I moved 21 times by the time I was 18 years old. I had some physical abuse, verbal abuse growing up that, really contributed to me feeling more and more disconnected, more and more different than my fellows, my people around me, because I didn't understand why my situation was rough, why my situation was like it was, why my father wasn't in the picture, and other people had that. And so that led me to feeling really disconnected at an early age, and I just remember feeling different my entire life. Although, throughout all that, I also remember clearly, as I look back at my life, I always felt a presence of light, presence of something bigger than me. And now, going through what I've gone through, looking back on it, I realized that it was all part of the master plan, the divine design that was created for me, specifically for me, my training ground, so I could be where I'm at today. But growing up, I felt lost, disconnected, and so I had issues with connecting. Part of it, moving around so much, I became a chameleon, and I didn't know who I was. I lost myself, and I played around with my identity, and nothing ever felt right. I had this huge void, and throughout life, it just got worse and worse. Different events, bad things happening, all kinds of stuff. I'm not going to go into all the details, maybe at a later date, but my challenges eventually led to me turning to substances early on, and my brother introduced me to marijuana at the age of 11. So 11 years old, blows my mind to this day that somebody thought it was funny to get an 11-year-old high, and I would never do that, never suggest it. And it's just crazy. When I met my wife, I came in contact with her son, and I've raised him and watched him grow up. And over these past years, he's 13 now, but when he was going through those ages of 10, 11, and 12, he was so young, so pure, so immature, right? And I just couldn't imagine somebody stunning that growth in that developmental stage. And that's what happened for me, unfortunately. And I turned to drugs early on, and by the time I was 13, I was dabbling in harder drugs, Xanax, opiates, and stuff like that. And that became the coping mechanism for a long time. Throughout the years, it just progressed, and I got worse and worse and worse. And so the next few years, I just struggled to maintain, got moved around, moved a lot more, lived in different states, different cities, lived with my dad actually for a while. When I was 16, he came back into my life, and things were great for a little while, but then they got bad again. his drug addiction got in the way, and yeah, so eventually I came back home. And when I got back home after living with my dad and going through everything I did with him, where I realized he wasn't the man that I painted the picture in my head of, and so it really let me down. It was really bad. It got to a point where every single weekend I would get locked out of the house on payday. I locked out of our hotel that we were living in, just different things like that. And he was locking himself into the hotel doing heroin and crack. And I just had to fend for myself around that time. And 18 years old, I ended up coming back to Georgia, and instead of dealing with any of that, or honestly just didn't know how to deal with it, didn't have any healthy mechanisms, coping mechanisms, or ways to heal. So I just turned to drugs. I turned to partying, I turned to sex, I turned to all these things. And the next 7 years of my life, I didn't draw a sober breath. And it was fun at first. I did a lot of parties, a lot of partying and moving around and acting crazy and going to concerts and meeting people and hanging out with people. But one thing for sure was that void was getting bigger and bigger inside of me, and it was expanding, and I just needed to fill it with more and more stuff, and eventually leading me to get more and more lost. And I was always looking and searching outside of me for the perfect mix, the perfect cocktail. What can I use? Can I mix this with that to make me feel better, more whole, more complete? And it never came. And it only got worse. And the drug addiction was so progressive that it went from the party drugs to cocaine and alcohol to opiates. And then when I met opiates, I became the thing that I swore that I never would become. I became just like my dad. I became a heroin addict, eventually became a crack addict, and eventually became homeless, experienced a lot of jail time and different things. And all that darkness that I felt during that time, I knew it was for a reason. I just didn't fully understand it yet. So when I finally decided to break down and get sober, which I had a profound spiritual experience that led me to realize that if I didn't get sober, I was going to die in 2 weeks. And that moment that I had, I knew that it was real, and I knew that it was time, threw me into this opportunity to get some clean and sober. And that was at age 25, which is about 10 years ago now, and completely changed my life for the better. And throughout this period of time, I started to get deeply involved with spiritual practices. I worked a 12-step community. I prayed, I did meditation, I did counseling. I did so much work on myself. And believe it or not, up until that point, I had never completed an entire book. That first year of being sober, I read like 3 books, all spiritual-based books. And I found that there was something awakening inside of me. And within the first couple months of being sober, I had a full-blown spiritual experience where I knew that I was on the path that I needed to be on, because I asked, and I had a profound burning bush experience. And that experience led to me changing overnight. And with that change, I started to dedicate myself to this journey of recovery, of giving back, of service, of living in a new way that created a positive ripple effect to everybody that I came in contact with. And it was so hard in the beginning, but year after year, book after book, mentor after mentor, counselor after counselor, job after job, I've just been grinding and learning and navigating on how to do my own healing, to grow spiritually. I've read countless books at this point in time and taken so many different credentialing and trainings and learning. Started out to become a certified addiction counselor, became that. Started on the clinical side, so I come from a clinical background and I still work in the addiction field. So I turned my life into a success story using God's help, the community's help, my mentor's help, the people around me help. And then I used that to transform my story to start giving back and to do something for humanity. And over the last 9 years, I've been doing that. I've been working in the addictions field. The last 8 years, I've been teaching meditation and breath work. I eventually became a Reiki master, energy healer. I'm constantly trying to better myself, to learn more, to learn alternate ways of healing through nutrition, through exercise, through mindfulness, through breath work, through energy healing, through being involved with the spiritual community. Highly suggest that as well. But there's so much more to talk about, but I think that I'm going to stop there. And it's been a great opportunity to share just a little bit about who I am and what I am. And hopefully, somebody gets something from this, that recovery is possible, healing is possible, and you can turn and transform whatever it is that you've gone through in the past, and you can turn it into a positive. I'm living proof of that, and there's so many others just like me that are out there, and I think it's important that we start to put our stories out there and share more and do more and just live more. So thank you so much, anybody that's listening to this, and I'm truly grateful. Thank you so much.